my first time, so I should make an official welcome for people, even though this is my first time doing a Zoom interview. So it's gonna be interesting.
All right.
All this more. So it's gonna be a cool interview. But man, welcome to this is the studio. If you were in Kansas City, this would be where we'll have the interview in the studio. But I wanted to just come in the studio because it's more. I have my lights here and everything, so it's way better than just being at home.
Right.
So, but welcome to the FiredUp KC show. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
I have Mr. Craig in the house. So from your bio, you have over, you said 40 years of experience?
Yeah, I've been a programmer for about 40 years. I started when I was 10.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
Yeah,
Tell me about that. How did that start? Tell me about that because I want to hear about that.
Well, so I guess the short of it is, and this would have been around early 1980 or so, from what I remember.
Okay.
One of my friends got a computer for Christmas. It was kind of that thing where personal computers were getting like popular as opposed to just a video game system. And so parents were getting their kids like these computers, whether it was Commodore 64 or Atari or an Apple computer, those kind of things that you would hook up to your TV or that kind of thing. Anyways, he got a bunch of books on programming and games and all this stuff. And his parents were hoping that he would get into it, and he didn't like it at all. But the good thing is I got to hang out with him every day. Went over, saw it, and I was completely fascinated with all this stuff. So they had a really good influence on me. I ended up picking up the magazines and books and stuff that he got, as a gift kind of thing. And I read through them, and the people that made these programs and stuff, the authors were kind of like, at that point for me, kind of like famous actors or something, movie stars, that kind of thing. Because it was all brand new to me. And I really liked the idea of being creative and like solving problems and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it came really, really natural to me. I'm not a big fan of like math per se or anything like that, but the idea of creating something with code, that kind of thing, to tell the computers something that you want it to do, and then seeing the outcome of that ended up being like really fascinating to me. And then years have gone by. I spent about 15 years in Silicon Valley during the first .com boom, when Google first started and that kind of thing. So I got to see a lot of crazy stuff back then, and a lot of stuff's happened in between, obviously, but that's how I got started. Yeah, it's kind of on accident. Yeah.
Well, so let me let people know who is here today. This is Mr. Craig Stadler. Where are you tuning from? Where are you tuning from? What's the?
I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Oh, dang. That's a couple hours away from Kansas City. That's quite a distance. See, that's why the internet is good, right? Like you are there chilling. I'm here in Kansas City chilling. We are with you having fun. So. Can I give us you kind of give us a little background of how you started into programming and whatnot. Give us more in-depth detail of how you've come from coding from at 10 years old to where you are today. What has that been about? Because I think you had the first before YouTube, you had your own first streaming platform before YouTube, right?
Yeah, it wasn't the same model exactly. So long story short is I moved out to the Bay Area in 1997. I think it was late 97, maybe early 98, probably 97. But anyways, and this was many years before YouTube. I don't know the exact year that YouTube came out, 2003 or something like that, I'm guessing, early 2000s. But anyways, I moved out there after I left Georgia because I heard that this big to-do was happening out in California. And I'm a programmer, so I was like, yeah, I'll go out there. Sounds cool to me. So I went out there by myself and started doing some contracting and stuff like that. And I really wasn't super happy with, I don't want to say the work that I was doing, but I kind of wanted to do my own thing. Make my own company, make my own software company, make some stuff that like didn't exist yet, that kind of thing. And so one of the things I thought of was, having been a programmer on Windows and stuff like that before, I wanted to make something on the computer that you could use to pull up a list of like TV stations and watch TV on your computer. Now, granted, this was 1998, which is, the bandwidth was really limited back then with DSL and stuff like that. And cable modems were barely out, kind of thing, in a lot of places. So I had a couple other software, products that I made in the same company, but I made that, came out with it, was received really well. Got to partner with, you may not even remember, it was a company called Real Networks or Real Audio. They were one of the first streaming platforms, really, really old. They were around QuickTime, Apple QuickTime, and Windows Media, and a bunch of those other ones. And this was basically so you could watch streaming stuff like on your computer.
Okay.
It really wasn't done so heavily through like web pages, but
Okay.
then by the time what they call like Web 2.0 came out, that all changed. So my app, basically desktop app, if you want to think of it that way, would allow you to pull up a list of TV stations and watch live TV on your computer. And that was called
Oh, okay.
CTube. And the reason I called it CTube was because I remember my grandparents would always say, you know, you're going to go watch the tube, you're sitting too close to the tube, about
Yeah.
about TV, you know, that kind of thing. It's kind of like an old school term, whatever. And so I started looking up, you know, things that had already been used on the internet because I didn't want to use a product name that was already out there. And I
Yeah.
noticed that nobody had used the word tube in anything because to me it made sense. Computer tube, you know,
Yeah.
computer mixed with TV kind of thing. So I was able to do that, came out with that product. We were on like Netscape's homepage. Netscape was an old browser, that kind of thing. It did
Okay.
really well. But then my interest started going towards creating search engines. So by that time, you know, I had made some money and that kind of thing and sold the company to somebody else and started getting interested in creating web search engines. So
Okay.
that was probably like, I guess four years after that. And then it
Okay.
was good timing for me because around that time, you know, the sales of the desktop app weren't going nearly as well kind of thing. And everybody was going to web pages and
Yeah. Yeah.
YouTube was getting big, obviously, and that kind of thing. And everything was more toward people uploading content rather than watching live television. I mean, people
Yeah.
still do it now, totally, through their Fire Stick and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I think, but yeah, so that kind of it was good experience. It, you know, it did really well, but I got called into doing other things. So yeah.
Dang, wow, wow, dang. Now you're calling like the years 1970 something, 88 something. I'm like 1997. I was 2 years old by now.
Yeah.
I was 2 years old. So I do not know what happened in those years. But it's just awesome to see how, if you really believe in something, you can work for it for like 40 years and still just keep doing it because it's something you really like doing, you know what I mean? So like what is the why behind having a video search engine? What are you trying to accomplish with that? Well, why did you even start a video search engine? What led you to that?
Yeah. So, like I said, once I was done with that part of my life kind of thing and the CTube thing, I got interested in what makes a search engine. And search engines obviously were really big in the early 2000s. There
Yeah.
was a lot of them besides Google, obviously. There's a whole bunch of them
Mm.
kind of thing. And I saw all these, video search engines popping up. But through the years, and you've probably even seen a little bit of this, a lot of those companies have like shut down because Google's so big at this point, they've kind of taken everything over.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
you've got a couple of major players, and that's not to say that they don't do a good job, but the level of variety that we used to have back then is just different than what it is now.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the nature of capitalism and companies and stuff like that. They get bigger, and smaller ones don't necessarily survive, and that's just how
Mm.
things go. I get that. But what happened for me was about a year ago, I was doing some research on something, and I was looking around in the internet, and I noticed everywhere that I looked, whether I went to like Bing and searched for videos, or Yahoo and searched for videos, or Google Video and searched for videos, it was all YouTube,
Mm.
which you would probably agree, most of what you see is all YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And that's all well and good, but I was like, what happened to all these other players that I knew about, like Vimeo and Dailymotion and MetaCafe, and there's a whole bunch of these that I knew about through the years, kind of thing. And I was thinking, well, maybe they all shut down, because YouTube is so big, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so I started doing research, and a lot of them do still exist, or did exist, kind of thing, and still do. And so the more research that I did to find out what was out there besides YouTube, the more I uncovered more platforms and even new ones that have come out in the last like 2 or 3 years.
Oh wow. Okay.
Because yeah, in the wake of people perceiving like censorship and bias and being like demonetized off of YouTube and
Right.
deplatformed and all that stuff for whatever reason, they've gone to other places. Some of these other outlets, kind of thing. And so a year ago, I was thinking, if all these other video providers exist, but I can't get to them through these search engines, I should probably just make my own search engine that
Yeah.
highlights those instead of YouTube primarily.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily to compete with YouTube, but what it is it's another avenue for you to find the content that you want that isn't necessarily on YouTube and could be in other places, right?
Okay.
And so through the last, probably 8 months or so of developing the product and getting it out there, I've uncovered 63 different platforms other than YouTube that are out there. And that
Wow.
means, yeah, I had no idea that were that many. So the more research I did, the more it gave credibility to the project,
Mhm.
kind of thing. And I ended up finding YouTube competitors that were in like Japan and China and Indonesia. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the YouTube competitor in Indonesia is all in that language. They have English content too. So that
Mm,
made the project, even more valuable to me.
mm,
So yeah, so basically that's that in a nutshell. Seeing that all this stuff was out there, but people just couldn't see it or get to it. That's
mm.
what made me make the video search engine so that people could.
Dang. Well, like, I mean, I want to know, like, so, like, now you're doing that how is that generating revenue for you, or how does that all work, or,
Yeah, no, so the idea behind that was, okay, obviously I got this idea for a product. Obviously, these people are saying that they would use it, it's valuable to them and that kind of thing, but
yeah.
that's only the first steps. So I
Mhm.
started to make the product, and then I started to think about, well, I want to include another piece in the offering that respects people's privacy, because I know there's a lot of press about people being upset with their data being sold or shared
Mm,
to another company that they didn't really mean for that to happen, and these
yeah.
types of things. It's happened to a bunch of major providers, be it Facebook or you've
True.
seen all these stories, I'm sure. And so
Yeah.
what I decided to do with the search engine was make it so that it doesn't rely on users' data for revenue.
Okay.
And that's the reason I think those companies have gotten into trouble, is because they don't necessarily rely on it, but it's probably a big part of their model. So what I decided to do was use unconventional means to basically fund the site. And so
Yeah.
by that I mean it has a Patreon that we just started, so people can actually join that. And if they believe in what we're doing, they can donate to that on a monthly basis or whatever thing. That's brand new.
Okay.
Um, we also have merchandise, so we make our own merch, which should be
Yeah.
like stickers and shirts and stuff like that. And then we have a flat like donate thing where people can actually donate directly to the project, or actually directly toward my cat, believe it or not, because the other part of the story, not to divert, because there are other revenue streams, but
Okay.
the other part of the story that you might find interesting is I made the search engine, right? And one of the hardest parts about stuff on the internet is people have like either bought domains so that they can squat on them and make you pay a whole bunch of money to get them,
Mhm.
or people have already used names. It's kind of like a lot of band names have already been used, right? So when you come up with an idea, you have to go on the internet and be like, well, has somebody else already used this name, or will it get confused with something else, right? Because you don't want somebody typing in your name and then something else comes up that's
Yeah, so, yeah,
totally
that's true.
unrelated,
True,
right?
true, true.
So you have to come up with a unique name that hasn't been used and hasn't been bought, like the domain. And I couldn't come up with anything. It was driving me crazy. So I was like, I got this great idea and I want to do this, but I can't figure out what to call it because
Yeah.
everything I can think of has been used, right? And so I kind of gave up. And sometimes when you're struggling with a product, the best thing that you can do, or an idea, I guess I should say, is just relax and give up and let it kind of happen when it's going to happen,
Yeah, true.
right?
True.
And that's exactly what I did. And it wasn't shortly after that, my cat, who was an orange cat, a ginger, I guess you would call it, came up to me and was just like kind of hanging out. And I was like, you know what? People like cats, or they're all over the internet, and people have mascots for websites, different,
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think I'm gonna name this after my cat. His name's Petey, short for Pete or whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it, another
Yeah.
name for Pete. And so obviously there's video involved. So I think I'm just gonna call it Petey Vid for short. And then I'm gonna hire one of my friends who does professional comic book art to make kind of a comic book version of my cat. And that's where the logo came from. Is that's actually my cat, like cartoonized.
Okay. Dang.
And
Okay. Wow.
so
Wow.
that's where that actually came from, which is kind of a fun part of the story because I didn't know what to call it, but it ended up being, kind of fun and not too serious or too technical or that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Now I'm thinking of a new idea. I'm thinking of whenever my friends, because my friends always come to me and be like, I have this great idea for a business, but I don't have a name for it. So now I'm like, you know what? They should go buy more pets. If they have more, like 5 or 6 pets, they can figure out maybe I'll go on maybe Birdie, but that's pretty cool. I just want to make a side joke right there, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
However, so being in the tech business, being in the program business, what is one thing you think YouTube has been successful at to make them become how they are? What do you think is there a key thing that has made them become so huge and take over the market? What do you think? How do you think they're being able to get more customers and other people?
Well, I think one thing is time. Obviously, that's incredibly important. I think one mistake that a lot of, I don't want to say entrepreneurs, but people on the internet make is just being impatient. things take time. Things take a lot of time. And when you think about the fact that I may be getting this wrong, but I think, the acquisition of YouTube happened easily more than 10 years ago, that kind of thing. I
Yeah.
could probably look it up, but point being is a decade is quite a long time on the internet, but a decade is also long enough to build an incredible following for anything. Like, think about it. If you're a band, usually in a lot of cases, you're not going to necessarily reach that. I don't want to say peak, and it doesn't mean that you're not important, but all the friends that I've seen that have formed bands and done tons of touring all over the world,
Yeah.
I don't want to say they didn't make it big, but they didn't make a huge impact where it could be like a sustainable part of their life until close to 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so if
And
you think about,
it's been
what's that?
14 years. They got acquired in 2006, so it's been 14 years.
Okay, well, there you go. So that's
Yeah.
almost a decade and a half.
Yeah.
So if you combine that along with the massive amount of revenue and backing that they had through their several rounds of funding,
Yeah.
they had a serious intent in building a very strong evangelical following. And I think it was through, honestly, being a little bit looser on their terms to get as much market share as possible for content creators, because I've done research and looked to see, the things that they're quite upset about now that they don't want people on YouTube either talking about or presenting, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If I go back to when they were acquired, that content was completely allowed back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it was basically getting those content providers in, as many as possible, and probably relationships with major media outlets as well to get them to use their platform. So whether it's Fox News using their platform or NBC or whatever kind of thing, having the content creation be solely focused on one vendor, one brand kind of thing, I think was pretty smart on their side, kind of thing. And then, later on, obviously, like around now, they can change their mind about advertising standards or content standards or that kind of thing, because they've already got the market share. They can make that decision now. Whereas it's smarter to do it now than it would have been back then, which they would have cut those people out, maybe. Yeah, I think.
So I've seen this. Is it Vivo? Why don't I pronounce it Vivo? Vivo? Is that part of YouTube? Because I see most musicians always use Vivo for videos. Is that part of YouTube?
You know what? I think that they may have been acquired by them, because I've seen that too as well. Because they used to be a platform additionally, and I see music videos that come up that have that watermark or whatever in the corner, and it always makes me wonder if they were acquired by YouTube, because I've seen so much of it, kind of thing.
Yeah, because I always wondered why is it that? Because I think I've searched at one point and seen a video in Vivo, but that was probably 4 years ago. But now it's it doesn't exist, but still the logo exists with YouTube. I think it has to be under YouTube or something. I mean, it exists, but it's not really popping or whatnot.
Okay.
But I mean, I think one thing I've come to understand with this, big corporations is them being able to understand customers. You know what I mean? Being able to understand who the market is. And the big thing right now I think YouTube is doing good at is having people have their own channels, right? Where they can actually make money out of their own channel, which is now, the whole world is all about entrepreneurship. Now, giving someone a chance to do that is a marketing tool for anyone to succeed, which is basically putting people on your platform and having them become successful through what you do. Now,
with enough effort, obviously, and a lot of effort, but yeah, even still having that opportunity and being probably maybe the only one in comparison to any other players, they've kind of got the market. So yeah,
I think that's a key. I think that's a key thing they did, because I don't think. I think other people also have channels, but I think they focus more on people becoming making money off their stuff. Making it easy as well. So in that direction, do you think it's with your business? Do you think it's always good for you to have a platform that doesn't just only pub yourself, but actually helps others? Be able to put others on the spot and make them make money as well. Have you been able to do that with your company?
Well, I mean, it's the Petey Vid search engine doesn't have any video hosting, so we function as a traditional search engine kind of thing. It's almost like if you were to go to video.google.com, you just do a search for videos there, and then you can go to wherever the video exists and go play it, kind of thing. And so the way I see us facilitating, I guess, the ability for people to find users' content that they've uploaded, kind of thing, is we've had some situations in the past during, you know, interviews and other conversations that people have said, well, I uploaded a video on YouTube, but like nobody can really find it because it's just buried in with all these other things. Because YouTube has its own algorithm basically to decide what to show you when you type something in. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it's definitely specific to whatever it is that they're trying to drive and that kind of thing. But that can have, I don't want to say a bad effect, but a perceivably negative effect by the end user, or maybe discourages them. If they put a video up and nobody can find it and they don't get any views and they don't get any subscribers, kind of thing, right? So what I would say is, with our video search engine, it's completely based on keywords and keyword density, if you will, if how many times something is mentioned, just a few things like that. Our video search engine isn't really based on how many times something's liked or viewed, or how long they've spent watching the video or anything like that. It's very, very kind of old school.
Okay.
And it's very geared toward bringing you whatever it is that you want, no matter where it is. Right? Because the thing is, if you're looking for something really rare, say it's a TV commercial from when you were 5 years old, let's just say YouTube doesn't have it. You go to YouTube, you search for it, it's not there. You're kind of done. Most people, you would just give up. You'd be like, well, it must not exist, right? Well, if you go to Petey Vid, you stand a much higher chance of finding it because we search 63 different outlets rather than just one.
Wow. Okay.
Right?
Dang.
And we're approaching almost 500 million videos that we've located. 500 million at this point across all those platforms. So that's really what we're trying to do, is facilitate the user to be able to have some diversity and choice and that kind of thing.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Dang. I mean, since we are on tech and programming, which I am not an expert on tech or programming. I am not.
Right.
I'm more of I do more creative stuff, but not like on the tech side of things. But what is one advice you would give like to a younger programmer who's out there trying to, you know, hustle up and trying to create a company or trying to program a new website? Well, what is one thing you would tell them, you know, that you wish you would have known when you were coming up?
Well, there's two things I guess I would say. Actually, this is pretty relevant because somebody just asked me about one of these things a few days ago, who's struggling with the kind of the return on investment for college, because they want to go to college and learn how to program. It's a friend of mine's son, and the cost of going to college is so insanely expensive at this point. And you end up having to take a lot of classes that don't apply to programming, and, you know, a lot of just, I don't want to say wasted time and wasted money, but kind of. So the thing I would say is, as far as being a programmer, and this applies to a lot of different things, but in particular, you know, I got started when I was really young, obviously, just because I enjoyed it. I didn't necessarily know if I was going to do it as a job. It was just something that I just really loved to do. And, you know, you've heard it a million times that when you choose a profession, you should do something that you enjoy doing, because it could end up, you know, sustaining you over a long period of time.
Exactly.
And the idea is like, don't get stuck into something that you think sucks. Just to make the money, kind of thing. So what I would say is, because of the amount of time that I ended up putting into, you know, learning how to program and be a better programmer, it gave me a lot of experience that ended up becoming valuable to like my future employers without me really intending it to. So it's almost like the better you get at what you do and the more you enjoy what you do, the more valuable you're going to be. I know that, you know, it seems like that would be very obvious, but yeah, because here was my case in point. My first actual real job that I got, I don't want to say like first job, because I had jobs before this and I worked in whatever IT and stuff like that. But my first programming job, I had all these positions that were offered to me to, you know, to kind of install networking and do all these things, which I knew how to do, but I really wanted to be a programmer. And the market was really tough back then, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
Before, you know, Silicon Valley was like, hey, you can have long hair, you can wear shorts, you can do whatever you want as long as you can do your job well. It wasn't like that, like in the South, which is where I was in Georgia. And so I struggled, and it took a lot of positions that I don't want to say I wish I didn't take, because I did learn a lot from them, and they were related to programming. But I was like, at one point I was like, okay, no more. I'm only going to apply for programmer jobs, and that's it. I don't care if I don't get them. I don't care if I get shot down 100 times. I will keep doing this, you know, going through interviews until I get a programming job, because once I get started, I'll be fine. And the first position that I interviewed for was a nuclear software engineer in Georgia. And now the nuclear part about it, I knew nothing about, but I knew how to be a programmer, kind of thing. So I was like,
Yeah.
hey, they need a programmer. I'm going to go in. I know this is in a field that I know nothing about, but I'm
Exactly.
hoping that all this experience, that I've done on my own kind of thing,
Yeah.
even outside of school, will help. And I was up
Mm.
against a guy who just graduated from MIT. Totally true story. And so I went in and, knowing this kind of thing and showing him all the work that I had done back to when I was like 10 years old. And at this point, I
Mm.
think it was like 23 or something.
Yeah.
Anyways, point being is I had a good solid, not on the job experience, but 13 years experience at that point programming kind of thing. When this guy got out
Yeah.
of college and had none, and I got the job.
Mm.
It blew me
Mm.
away. And it was like one
Mm.
of my favorite jobs I've ever had. And they took me in
Wow.
and taught me a lot and got me in with some like older programmers, and they taught me things. So that's a huge point that I would give to not necessarily a programmer, but anybody, I guess, within a certain profession, is like, make sure your heart's in it and you dedicate like as much time to it as you can,
Mm.
to get good at it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other half would be, the funny thing is, before that job, I was attending Georgia State University,
Okay.
and I just quit going because I couldn't stand it anymore. I just didn't like
Mm.
college. I didn't like
Mm.
college at all. Like, kind of thing. I did end up actually working in the computer center and helping people like understand like how to use computers and programming and
Mm.
all that kind of stuff. So I did like that, and I made the best of my situation. But everybody around me at that time was like, "You got to go to college because you're not going to get a job unless you have a degree."
Yeah.
And that may be totally the case in some points. Like, you're not going to be a doctor unless you go get a degree. Come on.
True.
You know what
True.
I
True. There's no way to go around
mean?
that.
No, right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't apply to everything, and I think that's becoming more relevant and more important now than it ever has been, with like
Yeah.
everything that's available to you on the internet, either for free or for very low cost.
Exactly.
And so that's the other part of my my advice that I would give to either my younger self or somebody else in that same position is explore your options and talk to people who like work in that field, and
Mm.
find out if you can take those classes and do those things, and get around leaving college with $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in debt kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being a little ridiculous, but you see what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
In my situation, when I left, when I decided I'm not doing this college thing anymore, I only owed $2,000.
oh, wow. Okay. Okay. You were good.
That's it. And that was like 1995, I think.
Wow. Oh, that's when I was born. I was still I was
So
still coming
yes,
out.
so there you go. Case in point, I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. Oh,
Okay.
I think it's saying meeting is upgraded by the host. Oh, there you go. So there you go. So case in point, I decided I'm going to keep doing this, keep doing my programming thing. I don't want this anymore, but I decided I want to do this thing, and I decided at a certain point, I'm only going to take a job if it's a programming job. I don't care if I'm a
Yeah.
college dropout. I don't
Yeah.
care. Somebody's going to be okay with me because of my merits and what I've actually like been working on personally. And
Mm.
first job interview, it happened.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think it's even more acceptable at this point for companies to accept programmers and engineers without degrees,
Yeah.
because in the last like year or two, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google have pretty much bled the market dry, like of all the engineers that are out there that are kind of mid-level or senior. So literally the industry can't grow these people fast enough.
Mm.
So that's why they've put out announcements. Google has, like, you don't have to have a degree to work for us.
Oh, wow.
Apple's done the same thing. Yeah.
I mean,
Now, granted, you
it's big on
probably
that
do
too.
have you do have to have graduated from high school, but that's not a degree.
That's not a degree. Wow.
So they're becoming very loose with those standards. And I've heard of bounties from companies as much as $6,000 to bring somebody in because they can't find anyone.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're in very high demand.
Hey.
Programmers are. Yeah, I don't mean
Whoa.
web page designers necessarily. I mean programmers. It's a slightly different thing. But anyway,
It's really, my thing is this though. Like, it's, for me, it's really funny how, like, things are changing so fast. Because back in the days, parents were so strict with, like, not back. You know what? Back in your days, not in my days. Because I was like, you know what? It's probably back in your days. Parents were always strict with, like, do this, do this, do this. You have to go through the same steps that I went through, or the same steps that your uncle went through. But now, this age and time when you don't have to do that, you literally can make your own way. A dude, I don't know if you know his name, but he's famous. I think his name Ninja. Ninja. He's like a gamer.
okay, yeah, I don't think so.
he makes millions of dollars by playing games, right? And I'm watching this, I'm like, what? Like when I was a kid, like my dad would like beat you for playing games too much, you know,
Right.
living my dreams. Like he's just like making money, having fun. And I believe we're in a generation where it's cool to have fun at what you do and make money out of it, you know. And
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, I would say obviously there's a lot of time involved, and I had a
yes,
conversation similar to this a couple of weeks ago with somebody, and they were saying to me, it was on another interview, another podcast. They said, "Wow, 40 years! Wow, that's so long." You know, with a mixed bag of emotions. I'm sure one of them is like, "Wow, I hope you really enjoyed what you were doing," and another one is like, "Holy crap, I can't imagine doing the same thing for 40 years." And you know, a lot
yeah,
of different feelings about it, and it made me really step back and think like, wow, I didn't really notice. I mean, I know that 40 years went by, you know,
yeah,
obviously
yeah,
because of
yeah,
chronological age, but
yeah.
it's almost like when somebody tells you like when you're in the middle of doing something and you're really enjoying it, whether
Mhm.
it's a sport or something that's quote work to most people, time kind of doesn't exist
Yeah, yeah.
because you're so involved in enjoying like the process.
Mm,
And I think that's a really ideal situation for anybody too as well. And like that gamer guy, like he had to start somewhere. I'm sure he spent like
definitely,
hours and hours and hundreds and thousands of
definitely,
hours doing
definitely.
things. And somebody might think like, wow, you spent 10,000 hours doing that. And he'd be like, well, I enjoyed it. Didn't seem like 10,000 hours, you
Yeah,
know,
true,
like,
true, true,
and
true.
that's what I would say in my case too as well. Even if you caught me halfway through at 20 years, I would have said, well, I just enjoyed what I was doing. So, you know, you keep going with it. And ideally you make a living for yourself and maybe can help some other people along the way and you know that kind of thing. So
Like people who we know as great people when it comes to maybe Elon Musk or the Bill Gates or talking about maybe Martin Luther King. These are people who were passionate about what they did. Like it wasn't about I'm gonna go get a job. No, it was about making a difference and being able to use what they have to improve other people, right? And I'm 100%. I'm big on actually giving more than I'm paid for, right? A go giver, someone who gives more value than you get paid for. Because at the end of the day, they say, "Give and it shall be given unto you," right? That means the more you give, it will be given back to you, right? Now, there's this mindset in the society where people just want to either get a job or be able to rely on Social Security. But in the real aspect of things, a job doesn't really make you a living. You become, just stay at a job you don't even like, right? But if you do
sure.
what you're passionate about, you become a door for other people to come and pass through you because you become a foundation or something, right? And I believe in that 100%. That's like what I advise people all the time. Yo, if you want to do something, make sure you're passionate about it and it's something that fulfills your purpose, right? Now, with that being said, even though I know you went through a route that's like being a programmer is like a big deal. Like if I were to go into like computer science, people would be like, "Yo, Zeke, you're doing it great." Now, what were the pushbacks you had, when it comes to maybe starting a company or maybe saying I'm gonna leave college and then start something different? What were the pushbacks you had during those times?
Well, I mean, the thing that always comes to mind, the first thing was when I moved out to Silicon Valley from Georgia, like I don't want to say straight out of college because I had a job in between there, kind of
Okay.
thing. But when I decided to move to California and took my first job there, they paid me a really great bonus. They gave me an excellent job. They paid for me to move everything. They paid for me for a hotel while my stuff was being moved in San Francisco. It was amazing.
Wow.
So I was very, very grateful for that. But as I was there for, I want to say close to 8, 9 months kind of thing, it
Mhm.
just really wasn't my thing environmentally. So long story short, I couldn't stand working in a cube. That was just my thing. I felt terrible at the end of the day, and you know, and so basically what I would say is, you know, at the end of that, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna make my own software company, and I'm gonna work at home, and I'm gonna make my own thing, and see where that goes, kind of thing. And I was being paid very, very well. And so there was a couple friends of mine, or I would say associates, maybe a half a dozen guys in the same department, and we would go out to lunch every day, kind of thing, or most days, like a lot of those places. And
Yeah.
I brought it up, and just about everybody in the entire group did that. Said to me, they were like, "Are you out of your effing mind, like that you're getting paid like really well. You got this, office over here and perks and everything else. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this software that does this and maybe this streaming, blah, 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 or whatever kind of thing. And I was really excited about it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And only one guy out of the entire, like probably half dozen or whatever it was, I can't remember. Only one guy actually pulled me aside and he was like, man, you should go do it.
Mm.
He's like, if that's what you want to do, you're young, you don't have any kids, you don't have a family, you don't even have a girlfriend at this point. You're here by yourself in California. Go do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Wow.
He's like, you know what? If it doesn't work out, I'm sure you'll find something else to do. And I was like, that's good advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I decided to do. So that would definitely be somebody, well, a whole bunch of people that ended up giving me pushback within. I mean, they weren't really good friends of mine, but still, those were my peers, like at my work, kind of thing.
I mean, that it's funny, like it always happens that way. When you have this new idea and in your heart you're excited for it, you're like, I'm pumped for it, like I'm fired up to do it. And then people around you are like, no, that's dumb. That's just dumb. That's like just dumb. You shouldn't do it, But I mean, I don't blame them because the vision came to you and not them. And there's a reason why it came to you, right? Because if it came to them, they wouldn't believe it, but you believed it.
Yeah, well, I think there's a flip side to that too, because what I would say to give them credit is like they didn't necessarily know me as a person. So anybody can wake up and be like, yeah, I'm going to be a star YouTuber, or I'm going to be a this, or I'm going to be a that. And, that's a nice intention. But if you don't necessarily know the person, who knows? It could be just somebody that just is not really willing to put in the time and the effort and would like to have something like that given to them, which doesn't happen, but if they had known me and had known that I had been a programmer for quite a long time and put in a lot of work and that kind of thing, and that I'm a very dedicated and passionate person when it comes to those things, I think that their answer would have been different, but they just didn't really know me. And I think that one individual could sense that about me, and I think that's why he said that.
Okay, so it's more of like
in all fairness,
like an understanding perspective, being able to understand who you are.
Yeah.
Now let me take a few more questions. So you are in Pennsylvania. So like, what is your day-to-day like? What is your do you still work, or are you just focusing on the online business or whatnot?
Yeah. So okay. Long story short, probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, before I started this project, I had an idea essentially that I wanted to create a search engine for image metadata. And what that means is when you take kind of a picture with your camera, there's some identifying information that goes into that picture that's embedded inside of it, that if with the right tool, you look at that image, not the image, but what's inside of it, and it'll tell you, oh, this is the model number of their phone or their camera, and this is the longitude and latitude of where they were when they took this picture, and just lots of really cool, weird data that's inside of the picture that travels with it wherever it goes.
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine who knew I was into search engines said, you should make a search engine, for image metadata. But police could use that, or, whatever. Law enforcement related stuff essentially. Could use that for cases, to match like serial numbers of people that they knew were like known offenders of child porn or anything like that. There's a lot of ways it could be used. And so originally when he gave me that idea and said that, I said to him, and I didn't completely like blow him off, but I said, that would be an insane undertaking, because do you know how many images there are on the internet?
Wow.
I can't even imagine, like, let alone like, web pages and everything. And I said, I would have to like get insane amounts of servers to process, millions and billions of images to find ones that were actually taken with a phone or taken with a camera, just to get that data out. And so it wasn't more than probably a few days. And I called him up, or I talked to him on IM, and I was like, dude, I'm totally going to do this. Because it was one of those things. I'm one of those kinds of people that it's almost like the more ridiculous and the more challenging it is, the more I want to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
See if I can. So I spent probably the better part of like 2.5 years or 3 years making this search engine essentially, and gathering all these images from all over the world. It ended up being close to like 1 billion and something images, with all this really valuable information in it. And then I ended up going to Twitter essentially and talking to a whole bunch of law enforcement software companies saying, hey, you want to try this out, kind of thing. I ended up forming a relationship with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And I said to them, I was like, you know what? I want you guys to just have this and use it for free, because I want to see if you can use this to help solve cases. Because if you can use this and it's valuable to you, what I've built, then I know it's going to be valuable to other people. So that was a really good move, I think, on my part. And, you know, keep this in mind too, as well, or whoever's listening or watching this. Sometimes when you make those decisions to give the right person the right advice or the right amount of work or whatever for free, it ends up coming back to you, kind of thing, or it ends up benefiting everybody involved. It's not necessarily about like how much money can I get for this. It's like who can benefit from this, kind of thing. And so that was part of my thinking too, is I'll give this to these people. If they can use it to solve some cases or get farther to help, you know, rescue some kids or something like that, obviously it's really good, you know, for mankind, you know, in a sense, for society. But it's even more important because it validates all this work that I've done for the past, whatever it was, 2 years or 3 years. And so I gave it to them. We met probably a month later, and they said that they were already using it to file police reports, and they had actually located critical information related to like pedophile cases and things like that. So it blew me away. I was like, I didn't even know if it was going to work at all for them. And I was totally prepared for them to be like, well, you know, maybe it's not so good, or maybe you need to change this. And they were totally happy with it. Yeah. So I went to Twitter and went to the internet, and I made a press release saying that I had a relationship with them now, partnership. And it wasn't, but maybe a couple of months later, a really big company in Canada reached out to me and said, you know what, we think what you're doing is amazing. We want to buy this from you, and we want you to just come work for us. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And so I've been with them. I can't tell you the name right now because it's what confidentiality, but it's a really big law enforcement digital forensics company. I'm in charge of creating tools for counterterrorism and helping save children. That's my full-time job.
So would you mind sharing how much you made for that?
I mean, it's well into the six figures. Yeah.
Wow. Dang. So what would you say has been your biggest success when it comes to, one, with influence and impact, and two, what has been your biggest influence when it comes to like making a huge sum of money for just one company?
Wait, so let me.
So the first one is impact, being able to do something that has had an impact in maybe in a bigger company, and second is, what is the biggest company you've sold so far? You know, and how much was it?
Well, the first, I mean, they both fall into the same thing. I would say, having created the things that I've done through the years, there's no, up until a certain point, there's no direct feedback from people that I've necessarily influenced, or the amount or magnitude that's happened. Because sometimes, think about it, if you were an artist and you make a song, you don't necessarily, that could save somebody's life. That could like completely change somebody's life and create an entire career for them. You just have no idea what that magnitude is going to be like, or the effect on people. And hopefully, I guess that's what we can hope for, by the way, like through our endeavors and whatnot, is that we positively influence other people to do the same, I think. So the only feedback I've gotten in regards to that would be the work that I did, not knowing if it was even going to be a viable product, or if it was going to go anywhere. I spent 3 years and a ton of my money on something, just hoping it would be valuable to somebody, and then getting the feedback from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children that it was helping save kids. Blew my mind. That was easily the biggest thing, because that's direct feedback from, you know, 5-6 people that are caseworkers that were using it to kind of connect the dots and figure out, you know, missing important details for, you know, saving somebody's kids, or, you know, that kind of thing. So I would say that's single-handedly probably the biggest thing that I've done. And I didn't even intend to do it. It just kind of happened. But making those right decisions about, like I said, it was kind of a dual purpose thing where I wanted it to go towards a really, really good cause. But obviously I wanted like the importance of validation so that it would be worth something money-wise. But that wasn't my first thought. My first thought is I want to impress these guys and do a really good job. And then the money will come later. And it did. And that was when the acquisition happened. And that's, you know, again, I can't necessarily talk figures.
No, don't worry about the figures.
Yeah, but it was
figures, so it's good.
No, I was going to say, so the the acquisition was more than I needed and more money than I had obviously spent putting into it time-wise and
Yeah.
server cost-wise and everything else like that. So it ended up like perfect for me. And now I get to work remotely. I still get to work at home, which is like perfect
Wow.
because they're in Canada and I'm in Pennsylvania. And I still get my free time to work on things that aren't necessarily related to that position, which is great. So I've been able to do the video search engines outside of that. I know I must sound like all over the place, but yeah, I just love programming and developing and creating new things. So it's perfect for me.
So if you were, are you gonna maybe at some point in the future expand and maybe get some, kids to come work for you at some point, or you want to solely do it?
I've started to do that. Yeah, I started to do that initially. So being in Erie, I hired 2 people locally that are, one's probably in their early mid-20s, who's just a new graduate who does PR outreach, who's a journalism graduate, who basically, this person I heard from somebody else was going to go work at a call center and just work this really dead-end crappy job and couldn't find any other work. And I found out that they had a really good personality and they learned quickly and they were a very driven person.
Yeah.
So I pulled this person aside. I said, you know what? I want to try you out for like a month or 2. I just want you to represent my company and I want you to go, email and make phone calls and keep things organized and not necessarily a secretary, but actually reach out to like journalists and get stories written about what we're doing and that kind of thing. And it ended up perfect for both of us because she hates working in a job, in an office too, an office job as well. And so now we can just communicate over Skype and she does things at, her own pace and it's perfect that way. Yeah. And then I've got another guy who's probably in his, probably late 20s, I'm guessing, who's actually in India, believe it or not, who does some programming for me for this project too as well. And then I've got one other guy locally who's probably in his early 30s who does some like web front end development.
Okay.
And then one other guy who does like video reviews and that kind of thing. So yeah, so I've been able to employ some people as well. So it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's legit. That's legit.
Yeah.
So I think we're coming to the end of the show. First of all, thank you for being able to make this time for us to actually talk. And thank you for being my first ever Zoom interview. This is interview. Let's go. But I'm going to ask you this. So through your experience and your learning, what is one thing you want to tell someone who's like maybe your younger self or someone out there who is trying to get into maybe programming entrepreneurship? What is one thing you've learned, or maybe 2 things you've learned that you think you want to share with other people out there today?
I would say probably the first thing, and I'm still learning this myself, and I still have to remind myself, is to be patient and enjoy the process, but be very, diligent. Put the work in, obviously.
Yeah.
Put the work in, but don't necessarily get discouraged because things don't happen immediately. Because I think that with technology and with our culture and with the media especially, having these sensational pieces like, oh, this guy made $1 million from reviewing toys. What they don't tell you is, how much, or the video game review guy or any of that kind of thing. A lot of these people put in a lot of time or a lot of effort, into what they're doing, whether it's playing an instrument or, that kind of thing. This goes back to what I'm saying, be patient with time, but don't sit around and wait. Like put the work in, obviously, that kind of thing. And it's hard to judge like how much work is enough and how much is too much. That's obviously difficult. But what I would say is don't sit around and wait and think that it's just going to happen either. Like, you know what I mean?
It's not gonna happen. No, it's not.
Yeah. So, yeah, just I guess the time thing is, and I still struggle with that myself too as well. I have to remind myself by writing things down when good things happen and progress has been made, to look back. I make a log like every couple of weeks about things that I've been doing and what's been turning out well and that kind of thing, so that when I do have those periods and I get down and I'm like, things aren't happening fast enough, I look back and I'm like, yeah, they are. You're just being impatient.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So
yeah.
now I'm a person who has I believe in having faith, having purpose. Now, what is your mindset about, either having faith or having a belief in something? What do you think? Do you think that plays a big role in what you've done so far? Whether it is having faith with a spiritual God, or having belief in yourself, or what is one thing that you believe in that has been able to push you so far and that keeps you going?
That's a really good question. I would say probably it's leaning more toward like having faith in the process and having faith in my decisions, even if they end up being bad, kind of thing, because you have to be leaning on yourself at some point in time, because, you know, growth only comes from either luck or making mistakes. And I think more so making mistakes and learning, kind of thing. Hopefully not really bad ones, but sometimes really good things come out of really bad mistakes too. So I think as long as you're making a sincere effort at what you do, and again, I would tell my younger self this too, but try to have a certain amount of faith in the process, because you're giving an honest amount of like work into it. I think that's where things can kind of get screwed up, where people, I don't want to say half-ass it, but they know they're not putting the right amount of work into it. They know they're not, like, you know what I mean? And then you end up with regret and like blaming and all kinds of stuff like that. And that can be bad. So having faith in the process, because you know you've put in a certain amount of, you know, real work and real effort into something, even if it doesn't work, that's cool. At least you know that you tried the best that you could, kind of thing. Yeah. That's what I think anyway, but yeah.
Putting it all, you putting it all. Man, well, we've had a good talk today. We've had a good, even though I'm not a tech genius, but I think I've learned a lot today, and I think a lot of people will appreciate this video. And I mean, thank you for the work you do. Thank you for being able to be, because I believe every entrepreneur, every creator out there is always a curious human being, someone who's very curious about things and being able to jump and do what they do. And for, you know, doing what you do, because if you didn't take all this, you know, risk, you wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't even be here today if I didn't take a risk, you know, because you called 1978, 1980 something, 1995, I was still not here, but I'm excited to be here talking with you today. But yeah, if people want to reach out to you, your social media, what is your platform? If they want to connect with you and learn more about what you do, how can they get to you?
Yeah, well, first I would say, like, thanks for having me. Great conversation too as well, and you asked a lot of really great questions that I've never heard before, so all good. Totally appreciate them. Yeah, very good. And you have a lot of really good insights too as well, kind of thing. So I would say, as far as reaching me, Petey Vid, I'll spell it out. It's PETEYVID.
Okay.
Yeah, Petey and Vid, short for
well,
video. Yeah. What I would say is there's a Facebook, there's an Instagram, there's a Twitter. I manage all of those. So if you end up wanting to talk to me, you can direct message me, and then I'll end up talking to you there. We'll become friends somewhere else or something like that. So I'm always open to DMs and talking and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Through your standard platforms, yeah, through the Petey Vid thing. So
that's beautiful. And hey, Kansas City is home. Whenever you come through, let's go. This is where we at. Kansas City is where we at.
Awesome.
Because with FiredUp KC it's a platform that we're trying to use to make it a center hub for Kansas City entrepreneurship, leadership, and being able to motivate people. So whenever you come through, you never know. It might be the biggest thing on town whenever you come through. You'd be like, that's my boy Zeke. Hold on. You know, I'll be here. But thank you for this. Thank you for actually, you know, being able to make another time for today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for the work you do. Again, thank you guys for tuning in today. We had our first Zoom, and I'm excited, and I'm so pumped. Well, I think we're gonna end this now, but we can definitely maybe in the future, you know, we can still do some more stuff together. But thank you for today. Thank you for coming through. Thank you too.